Hello and welcome to the Xtra Edge, a sports analytics podcast powered by KINEXON Sports. Please like and subscribe on any and all of the platforms you prefer to listen to your podcast. I'm Dave Grzynski, and today we're talking with Shawn James, who is the assistant men's basketball coach at Whitman College, the home of the Blues in Walla Walla, Washington. I just love saying Walla Walla, Washington. Coach, first of all, let me thank you for taking some time to join us here on the Xtra Edge.
Dave, thank you. You know, it's always a pleasure to be on stuff like this, and especially with some of the last coaches you had on here, to be included in that category is really cool. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. We're honored to have you. But you know what? Since you rolled into town from Eastern Washington a couple of years ago, your program has now compiled a 42-14 overall record, an outright Northwest Conference championship, and a share of the conference title last season. You're developing conference MVPs, defensive players of the year, all region players, and this is where I start to wonder how much the data might have to do with it. So on this podcast, we talk about how coaches collect the data, sports data, analytics, then get the insights, and then take action, or data, insights, and action. So let's start with the data, Coach. And you personally, can you talk about your career? When did you start using data and why?
So I probably first became really into it during my internship with the Dallas Mavericks, just because in the NBA, there's so much data and numbers available. They're always finding creases, right, for a small advantage. And so the amount of information that they have at their fingers is mind-boggling. A lot of it is incomprehensible to someone who just got into the business like me. And so it was really cool diving into some of those numbers and just seeing how people use them, what they like, what they don't like, how they weight it with their eyes. And you just see how important it is. And so the further you get along, especially in the low major Division I level, at the Division III level where I'm at, it can give you a big advantage competitively. And so I think it's really important. And it's something that I've tried to follow my whole career. And I'm not a statistician by any means. I'm not super, any of my professors could tell you I'm not the smartest math person, but it's something that I've tried to stay in touch with as I've gone through in my career and at least stay with the curve. And it's been a big boon to me so far.
Well, you're talking to a guy who majored in communications because there was no math. That was the clincher for me. So I feel you. And the thing too that really intrigues me, and why we wanted to have you on is because you're at a Division III school. But we're going to get to that here in a minute. But essentially, your experience with data, I mean, you kind of started at the top, right? With your role with the Mavericks. Can you talk a little bit about your role and what you were looking at with the Mavericks without giving away any secrets?
Well, so my role is very basic. My role was to count shots, right? So you would watch a workout. So I had two guys. I had Harrison Barnes and I had Solomesery, and I would count every shot that they took, and we had codes for the type of shot that they took. And so you would watch the whole workout over again. So that would take, 30, 40 minutes, an hour, however long it took. And you would count where they shot. All right, this is their standstill left corner, their standstill right corner. We'll say that it's a hammer to the corner, or it's a lift up to the wing. And you're tracking all of that. And our player development people would see every shot and every type of shot that these guys had taken throughout the year. And you could track improvement. You could track if they're going up, if they're staying flat, if they're trending down. And it's just a way to see how they're developing, right? And I think in player development, that's the most important thing, is to track how guys are developing, especially guys that don't get on the court. So you can't see in a game if they're doing better or not. So you have to have a way to measure if they're improving. And so it's very basic analytics and very basic numbers, but it's the most important kind of numbers.
And so you take that knowledge with you now. Now you're the coach, right? You get to make the decisions and have some input on the data that you're using. So was it a tough sell? Was it an easy sell at a Division III to say, hey, listen, I experienced this with the Mavs, and I think it'd be huge, for us to have. How did that conversation go?
So it had actually come on right before I got here, so I can't take any credit for that. Our head coach, Coach Lamanna, is really in tune with analytics as well, and he's always looking for an edge, so to speak. And so when I got here, he kind of handed it off to me for the day to day, and we just took it from there. So I kind of managed the day to day aspect of it, the setup, the tagging, and we all kind of go through the numbers after that. But I can't take any credit for bringing it here.
You could take a little bit of credit. We'll give it to you. But and now, from what I understand, you're using one of the newer products that's out there, the Compete Vision. And so, is that different from the system you were using before? And how was the transition?
So we did not have a system before. So it was just us statting practices, which we still do just for other numbers. But the Compete Vision essentially does what I was doing by hand in Dallas, which saves us so much time. So I've gone from watching every workout and statting it to just looking at the reports, which is, again, for a Division III school with a small staff and not a lot of manpower, the more time you save, the more efficient you can become in your work process is so important. And so it's been a lifesaver, honestly.
Yeah, and so you're uploading your practice video to the app, and not only are you getting the shot tracking taken care of, but you're also getting back the performance metrics as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you'll get your distance, your sprints, load, and so that's really cool. Where it's the physical component, you can help structure your practices a little differently. So the different thing about Division III is you don't get summer, spring, fall workouts. Like everything's optional until October, and then you hit the ground running, and your first scrimmage is in like 2 weeks. And so you're entirely dependent on the guys getting themselves in shape, being in the gym, right, doing what you kind of ask them to do, which you can't monitor. And so your run up into the season is a lot shorter, and so our practices are longer, because we have to get guys right a lot faster than, say, if you're a Division I and you have the whole summer with your guys, and then you have the whole fall, and then you can really start your practices. And they already kind of know what you're doing. And for us, it's you're hitting the ground running immediately from the first day you can legally practice according to the NCAA. And so the load the first couple of weeks is insane. Like, the numbers are just through the roof. And so as the season goes on, you want to try and taper that down, because if you're going at that pace the entire year, you're going to get injuries. You're going to get guys that just burn out mentally, physically, emotionally. And so having the kind of numbers where the first couple of weeks we are like, okay, this is probably our max for a hard practice. And if we're still doing this in January, where do we need to pull back, right? What can we adjust? What can we cut? What are our segments that are the most taxing for the guys? Is it something we can keep in or not? And those numbers are really, really important. And it's a big reason of why we've been able to stay mostly healthy. Like, we haven't had any real major injuries in the last 2 years. Everyone's going to get nicks and rolled ankles and stuff like that. But I think it's been a really intelligent part of why we haven't had any major injuries.
Are there any specific metrics, and we'll talk about shot load here in a minute, but are there any performance metrics that really stand out to you now that you've been using it for a little while, and you say, boy, I can't really live without those? Like, I usually call it the metrics trifecta. I stole it from one of our sports scientists. His name is Phil Linneman, but I love that, because it's like, he tells coaches, you don't have to be overwhelmed. Pick your top three, call it your metrics trifecta. Do you have a metrics trifecta at this point?
In terms of shooting or in terms of physicality? Well,
let's see. Is there a difference, as you're using this system? And I guess you tell me, is it, start with physicality.
So load and sprints are really important to us. Just because we can tell who's working the hardest, who's on the court the most, stuff like that. So we had a kid who didn't play a lot this year, but his load and his sprints were the highest on the team, which means he was getting in. He was in reps, right? He wasn't taking a lot of reps off. He was working really, really hard. And maybe it wasn't something we noticed. Like, you notice it, but it just kind of goes to the back of your mind where, okay, maybe he's on 10 more reps than someone else. That doesn't really click for you. But then you look at it over the course of the year, and he has 80 more sprints than the next closest person. You're like, wow, this guy's really, really been working. His load is, 200 higher than the next guy. Like, he's been working. And then you can see another guy, and you're like, well, he's not really injured. He's a starter. Why is he 12th? What do we need to talk to about him? Where is he sneaking off to in the middle of practice that we haven't really caught yet? I think those two numbers are very important. And and then just overall time, you can see overall time they've been on. So obviously if they're missing time with injuries, their number will be down. But the guys that we want to see guys that are on the court, that are practicing, and then maybe your brain kind of twists and distorts stuff. And then you see the numbers and you're like, okay, well, this is what's actually happening. And so that's really cool.
And I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, because this is important, so when if these guys are ready to play or not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And by design, our practices are kind of lighter towards our high minute guys towards the end of the year. We'll do Monday games where the starters will play a little bit, and then it's kind of just the next 10 we'll finish it out. Because we want to keep guys in a rhythm, but we don't want to burn their legs out. Especially, we play back-to-backs for a conference, so we play Friday, Saturday, and we play really long road trips. So our closest conference opponent is 2.5, 3 hours away, and the next ones are 4 to 4.5. So you're getting on the bus Thursday, you're driving, you're going over the mountains too. So you go for the mountain pass and either into Portland or into Seattle. You sleep. You play at 8 p.m. that night, the next night, and then you play at 6 p.m. the night after that. And so, and then you get on the bus and you come home. So it's long trips. You're not getting home until, early Sunday morning. You have that day off, and then you're hitting it Monday. And so for our guys that are really high minutes, 30 minutes a game, we don't play anyone really over 30 minutes a game, maybe one guy. But that's where they kind of get worn down, is you have like 12 hours off, and then it's like, all right, you're back to it on Monday, And then we've had road stretches that are 4 to 6 games sometimes, just the way our schedule works out. And so you want to keep guys fresh and available, and the healthier team, if you can keep your main guys healthy and available, then you're in a better position, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we mentioned the shot load, and that's obviously something that is unfamiliar to a lot of people because it's new. And to put it in, just to describe it briefly, it's essentially what happens in the last 10 seconds before a shot. And then I understand that there's high, medium, and low. So low might be like a free throw, standing there at the line, those 10 seconds, you're not doing much. But a high shot load, or a contested shot, is you make a steal, sprint down the floor, up, foul, and one. That is a highly contested shot, and the shot load on that would be high. Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yeah. I'd say low is, free throws, or maybe like a mic and drill, messing around shots during a water break, half quarters, like that. I don't look at low too often. Honestly, our low shots are sometimes lower percentages than our other ones, than our medium or high, because guys are kind of messing around a little bit, or it's not a serious part of practice. We pretty much exclusively look at medium and high intensity shots, because those are going to be our live reps, or in a workout, we're not taking low intensity shots, right? In our player development sessions, we're taking medium and high intensity shots. They're either off movement, or they're against, me as a defender or someone else as a defender. And so those numbers are the most important to us. Most of our shots are going to be medium intensity shots. So it's like, even in a game, if you're just flowing to the corner or it's a transition shot, it's probably going to be a medium intensity shot. The high intensity ones are those physical drives to the rim. Maybe kind of an end of clock isolation where you're trying to get open, or if we have a shooter just sprinting around screens, and just catch and shoot and firing, those are our really high intensity shots. And we have less of those than the medium intensity ones. But the numbers are really important, because you want to see who shoots it when, because those are the most of the shots that you're going to get. So you want to see who shoots it at the highest percentage, who's the most reliable guy in those sort of situations. And so being able to track that through workouts, through practices, it gives us a lot of insight and a lot of confirmation too for what we already think. It's invaluable.
Well, you mentioned one of the magic words there, insights, and that's what I was going to ask. Like, can you think of a time where you looked at the shot load data and said, "Man, we would have not known that, if we did not have this information." Are there any of those aha moments that you've had yet?
There's been a few. A lot of it is confirming what we think, which is really important because as a coach, you second guess yourself all the time because you have to, right? Am I being a little crazy? Am I too in love with this player? Do I hate on this player a little too much? Right? Am I thinking correctly? And and so confirming what you know is really important, but then it does give you some other insights. And so we had a player who was just an unbelievable 3-point shooter this year off movement, catch and shoot and transition. He was one of the most efficient players in the country. But he wasn't great going like when he was sped up at the highest of high intensities. And so that was something that we noticed once we had a big enough sample size, right? So probably about a month in. And then we started repping it in our individuals in our small group workouts with him, just going at an exaggerated fast pace to try and get his comfortability level up, with taking those kinds of shots. Because it's hard when you go from being a role player to being the guy. And so let's work on you being the guy a little bit. You're shooting 55% from three. He was at 60% from three in conference for a while at high volume. Like let's get you to the point where these shots are just unconscious, And it really there was one game where it just kind of clicked, where he was like 6 for 8 from three in the first half and at like 20 something at halftime. It was ridiculous. And just wasn't hitting the rim, was getting chased around everything and just bagging every shot he took. It was really awesome to see the work pay off. And it's something that we probably would have noticed, but we wouldn't have known, right? So that's something that the numbers really give you is peace of mind, and they give you can't argue with data, right? You can argue with yourself until the cows come home, but with the data, you have the proof, right? And so we had the proof, we put in the work, and it paid off for him really well.
I'm just curious, how long of a process was that when you noticed that and then you start repping it? Was it a couple of weeks before you saw that improvement, or was it a month? How long was it?
Yeah, it's always a long process. They'll pick it up. It depends on the player too. They'll pick it up quickly, but then to get it to a point where it's noticeably improved takes weeks or months. So like the way we think about it is we want them to jump 3 to 5% in probably 2 months, right? If you can jump 3 to 5 in live play, right? So if you're a 37% shooter, we want to get you to 40. If you're a 35% shooter, maybe 38 to 40. That's where we want to get you in live play. So in workouts, we want you to shoot even better than that, right? Can you shoot 75 to 80% uncontested in a workout? Because if you do that, you'll probably get to around 38, 40%, even higher sometimes in live play. But it does take time because it's a new muscle memory. Your brain has to get used to it too cognitively. And so it's just a process. There's no real quick fixes, I'd say. But if you recognize it early and you start hammering it and you're just consistent with the work that you do and your approach and the effort level, then you'll see results.
Yeah, and was there any particular drill did you develop the drill on your own, or was there something that you had, that you used before and maybe you just sped it up? How did you get to that goal?
So we pretty much with anything like that, we just try and do what we normally do, but exaggerate it. So with him, we just tried to make him go way faster, like at a ridiculous pace, like at an uncomfortable, ungame-like, psychotic pace. When I work with our bigs, which that's my primary duty is our bigs, I'm just hammering them, right? No fouls. No, I know you're going to go right. I'm going to sit on your right and you need to find a way to get to it. Right. Just stuff like that, where I'm not going to say, are we reinvented the wheel by any stretch of the imagination? Cause I'm sure there's been coaches out there that have done every sort of drill. Right. But we just try and find the shots we're trying to improve, the spots we're trying to improve how do we normally get to those spots? What are his shots looking like? And then how can we make it either faster or more uncomfortable, or just something where it's not just, okay, you're going to run to the corner and shoot a three, right? No, I'm going to be on your tail and you got to get it up over me. I'm bigger than all our players. If you can get it over me, you can get it over anyone in the league. So I'm just going to make you really uncomfortable. I'm going to talk smack to you, right? I'm going to bump you. Just anything I can do to kind of make it uncomfortable for them. And once they get consistent with that kind of stuff, once you're shooting it over some of the other people in our league or some of the other people at this level, it's easier, right? Because you're not getting fouled by coach. You're not getting your arm hit by coach after you shoot it. You're not going at that crazy pace. It just seems, it's like using a donut on a bat, right? It's just a little slowed down. It's a little smoother. It's easier.
But the thing that I think is important is the fact that you can focus on the coaching, right? Because in the background you're going to have the video uploaded to the app, and the app is going to give you the shot map, right? And you're going to be able to look at that and know, look, and you'll know, like, this is where I was hounding him, this is where I was talking smack and making him work and making him uncomfortable, and look, he's only at 12%, and then you could go back and then do you look at that? Is that how you do it? You go back then and look at the shot maps and the shot loads and everything, and then put it all together and say, okay, this is what we need to work on next, or we're good here, let's move on to something else.
Yeah. So we try and rep everything, honestly. But we'll have different points of emphasis. So if maybe we're doing 10 makes from 5 spots, but one spot's not as good, maybe we'll do 20 makes from there. And with the maps and whatnot, a lot of that is from our individual or our small group sessions, where we'll look at that and we'll have a couple of guys in there. We're like, all right, let's see who shot the best from this spot during this. Because in practice, it's a little trickier just because there's so much going on and you're focusing on so much and the players have so much going on. Like, the numbers are a little different. But in your small group sessions, those are where we get really, really honest numbers. And so let's say we have 3 wings in one of our small group workouts and one guy shot just really, really badly. The other 2 guys shot good. Why did this guy shoot poorly? Is he just a poor shooter and this is on par for him? Did he have a bad day? Was he just in his head? At our level, did he have a lot of homework? Right? We're a high academic school. It's a ton of academic work. We're a writing heavy school, papers. So these dudes are up all night doing papers. Did he get enough sleep? Right? And so it's all stuff that the numbers give you, like, the numbers are the numbers, but then our job is to figure out why, and I think that's the really fun part for us is, individually, and then we'll get together as a staff, is to figure out why these are the numbers. If he's a 35% shooter and he shot 35%, we're like, okay, that's normal. But if it's our 55% shooter that shot 35%, we're like, okay, what's going on? Is it a bad day? Is all this stuff going on? Were we just really mean to him and physical and speeding him up the whole time? The diagnostics are the really fun part of all of that.
Would you say that the shot load information that you get, would you call that a game changer from, even from just a few years ago when you didn't have it?
Yeah, absolutely. Just the more information you have, the more informed you can be. And so to know that, let's say there's no shot load and you can see that a guy is shooting really well from the corner, but in games, he's not. Because in games, he's a medium and high load shooter, but in practice, he takes 1 million low intensity shots from there, right? And so just having that kind of breakdown, you can tell the guys that are good practice players and good live players. Sometimes they're the same, but a lot of times you have kids that shoot really well in practice, and the second it gets live, the wheels come off, right? And so you want the most detailed information that you can get, and that level of detail is something that's invaluable to coaches and to us.
It's crazy to me how intertwined it all is, the data, the insights, and the action. You know what I mean? Because, you get the data and then right away, okay, he makes 1 million shots uncontested in practice, and then he hits in a game. So now we got to take action and we got to do something about it. But that's what it's for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's there to make your job easier. It's there to confirm or to challenge your notions, your intuition. And so it just makes your life so much easier when you can look at the numbers, you can diagnose it, and then you go out and put a plan into place, and there's no quick fixes like we touched on earlier, but you can identify pretty early on what a guy's strengths and weaknesses are. Like if your 6'8" center that doesn't shoot threes is 2 for 3 in practice, like he's not just going to start shooting threes now, why was he 2 for 3? Were they into clock shots? Was it him just messing around in a drill and he got hot? We're not going to start drawing up pick and pops for the kid.
Well, the data doesn't lie, right?
Yeah, that's what he would say. But it simplifies your life because you don't have to do it manually, right? And so you can just focus on making decisions and using your head to kind of diagnose what's going on, and then putting your plan into place.
And being at a Division 3 school, I mean, how much does it help? How much help do you have doing this? Because I understand you're not only the assistant men's basketball, you're kind of like the sports scientist and video coordinator. You're wearing a lot of hats. But do you have other people helping you?
So we all do we'll all look at the numbers, and then we'll all get together and talk about it. In terms of a setup and the tagging, that's a one-man job. That's me. The beauty of it is that it can be a one-man job, where if we were statting everything by hand, we're not Alabama. We don't have 10 GAs and a sports scientist and 2 video guys running around to do all this stuff. It's a 3-man job, and then our student manager sometimes. So it's like a small business. You're wearing a lot of hats, you're doing a lot of stuff, and the beauty of this is that it is a one-man job. So I can get stuff done. I can set it up. I let it go. I chart it, or I tag it the next day, and then it's done. Right? It takes 20 minutes total, maybe. The smaller sessions will take 5 minutes. The longer, 3-hour practices will take a little longer. But it's only gotten faster and faster. It's very efficient. And then to look at the numbers, that's the long part, is diving through the numbers. And that can be as long or as short as you want it to be, depending on how in depth you want to go. That's what I enjoy doing the most, is looking at that kind of stuff where, hey, I thought this guy had a great practice. Oh, I guess he didn't. Or I guess he really did. Wow, good job. That stuff is super important, especially at a Division 3. Not everybody has stuff like this. And so it gives you a huge competitive boost in your player development and your practice timing. We can be a lot more cutting edge with the numbers than we could without them.
Could you see this maybe potentially being, for a Division 3 school to maybe change the structure a little bit, maybe offer a graduate assistant program or something where they come in, they help you, maybe not so much with the setup and stuff, or maybe they could, but helping you, you get somebody from the analytics department who wants, who's still around and loves numbers, wants to get in there and start help you break down the numbers. Do you think there's an opportunity for that at D3 schools to maybe turn it into something, find somebody who's not even, doesn't even have to be somebody who's a basketball fan, just likes the numbers? You think that's an opportunity that could maybe develop?
Yeah, absolutely. It would depend on the school and their situation. Obviously, Division 3 is such a large landscape with such a wildly varying array of schools. But definitely, if I'm, let's say, an MIT or a U Chicago, and you have a massive data analytics program, and it would be a great internship opportunity, great practical experience, because the amount of data at your fingertips is really big, and it's practical. Right? Sports science is a huge practical field. You have hands-on applications. There's a ton of learning, and then you are in kind of a high pressure environment, and that, pressure makes diamonds. So it would be an invaluable experience for anyone that would be trying to get into something like that. And coaches at this level, we're always looking for help. So if you're there to offer your services, most people would probably listen, right, and hear you out. And the more you can bring to the table, the better. This stuff for an intern or a grad assistant in especially analytics field, sports science field is really fascinating, and it's really cool.
That's
more hands-on experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great to hear. That's what I always I think about that, because everybody needs help. We talked about a lot of the good things that have happened since you've been using the system, but is there anything still missing at this point? I mean, if the answer is no, that's fine. But is there anything where some days you're like, boy, I wish, or maybe you had it with the Mavs that you don't have now?
I think this is more of an us thing than anything, but the wearables would be fun. But that's just not in the picture for us financially. That's probably.
But that's the beauty of Compete Vision. You don't need the wearables.
You don't. And it is really cool, the physicals and all that stuff that it gives you. Ultimately, I don't think there's much it's missing because we will track the stats, everything else manually, like rebounds, assists, turnovers. When a computer, maybe you have an advanced AI that just you put it in at the MIT Sloan Institute for a couple of years and it learns how to stat practices, then we'll be really excited about that one. I think that's probably the next big step. But until then, I'm really happy with the product that we have. It gives us everything we need and more. So yeah, no real complaints.
No, that's great to hear. And I'm just curious, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask you about yet? I want to make sure, because like I said, I think this is such a unique situation. You're our first Division III school on the podcast, and I think it's huge, and I think it's great that you're diving into the data and you're using it and it's paying off. Is there anything that we missed that you'd want a Division III coach to know?
I think the biggest thing that I would say is if you have the ability to do it, you should do it. The biggest consideration at this level is budget. And a lot of people would probably need to fundraise for it, but if you can do it, it's something I would highly, highly recommend. It makes your life so much easier. It makes you more intelligent as a coach. It makes you better as a coach, and it gives you a competitive advantage. So if you find a way to make it work, 5 stars, I completely recommend it. And even, JUCOs, D2s, and AIs, the small college basketball scene, we're all really similar. We don't have big staffs. 90% of us, it's a 2 or 3 man job, a couple managers, maybe a volunteer assistant. Like, you don't have big staffs. Even some of the low D1s, you don't have big staffs. You have a lot of guys working for free, right? If you can make it work, it gives you an edge. You don't have to have your GAs chart shots in the individual workouts. You can put them. It makes your time looser. You can go do more things. You can go recruit. You can go home 2 hours earlier. Which I know we all like to get a little more sleep. So if you can make it work, then it's worth it.
That's great. If you're comfortable giving out an email or something, is there some way if people have questions, if they hear this, they want to contact you directly? Do you have a way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. My email is shawnj@whitman.edu. Just put whatever you want in the subject line, and I'm highly responsive. So if you have any questions or just want to connect, I'm always open. Feel free to reach out.
Well, Shawn, hopefully the subject line is, I heard you on that awesome podcast. Right? But no, this has been phenomenal. This is great. And, and again, you're using Compete Vision, which is so new. And then again, being a Division III school, so unique. And I thank you for taking the time and joining us today on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And again, if there's ever anything I can do for you guys, just give me a shout.
All right. Hey, if you know a great coach like Shawn James who's doing great things, winning games, and doing it with sports data and analytics, we'd love to hear about them. We may even ask them to be a future guest on this podcast. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at KINEXON Sports, or look for us on LinkedIn at KINEXON Sports and Media. Remember, we want you to innovate the game by collecting the data, getting those insights, and turning those insights into action. We'll see you next time.